Welcome back to the G-Foils channel. In this video I'm gonna show you how I fix this fully snapped board. Maybe you remember the video where I showed you how I repaired the carbon fiber fish. Well, the owner of that snapped board now snapped another one on the same surf spot. This surf spot in Spain can be pretty sick with some heavy hollow waves. We went there on a holiday this last February, so if you want to check it out. There's a video about this surf trip on my channel. Click the link on the right hand corner of the screen to see it. Anyway, back to this video. I started this repair by cleaning the board. That meant using the hairdryer to heat up the wax and scrape it off with a squeegee. And then use the towel with some white spirit or cleaning spirit to clean off all the excess grease of the wax. This way the epoxy that I will be adding later to this board will stick to the board. I put some popsicle sticks in the foam to help me line up this board for the gluing. I test fitted the two pieces and then started the gluing process. I added some cotton fibers into normal laminating epoxy and then spread it across the two foam halves. I pushed the two foam halves together and then taped it so they stay in the right place. I took a few steps back and checked the rocker line. With the rocker line approved, I put the board straight up and let the epoxy cure for the night. The next day I removed the tape and glued this piece of fiberglass that was loose back onto the foam. I used epoxy with a little bit of micro balloons to do this. I sanded the deck and removed all the pieces of fiberglass that weren't properly attached to the foam. Then it's time for the bottom side of the board. There was a big buckle in this board, so I had to fill that up with some pouring foam. I put two heavy boxes on the nose and the tail of the board to open the crease a little bit more to let the pouring foam really seep into all the cracks. A few hours later I sanded it all smooth and then added a little bit of epoxy and micro balloons to make a really smooth finish. The next day I had to sand the micro balloons to make the board flat and ready for the laminating. But before I could start the laminating process, I cut a slot with my circular saw in the stringer. And I will be adding some carbon fiber in that slot to reinforce the stringer and connect the two halves even more. I pushed down the carbon fiber cloth into the slot with a popsicle stick. It took a lot of force to do so, so I think the slot is pretty well packed with epoxy and carbon fiber. I did the same on the bottom side of the board and then the next day I had to sand it all smooth. I prepped the board even more for lamination by taping off the area where I want to laminate it and then sanding all the epoxy so that there is some grooves in the epoxy so that the new epoxy will adhere better to the old board. I prepared the fiberglass and cut all the fiberglass pieces with an angle so there is no break lines where the board can snap again. I added 3 layers of fiberglass to the deck of this board. I wetted out the fiberglass cloth with epoxy and made sure all the layers were saturated. And a few hours later I came back to trim the fiberglass along the tape line. I had to repeat this whole process on the bottom side of the board. But I wasn't fully satisfied with the area there where the buckle was, so I added some more micro balloons and epoxy, waited a day, sanded it all smooth until I was satisfied, and then started the lamination process. There were a few other areas on this board that needed repair, so I glassed them as well. I sanded all the areas and applied a thin coat of epoxy with a brush on all the areas where the fiberglass was sanded down. I used the excess epoxy resin to do a hot coat on the snap repair. I also added a hot coat to the bottom, and then this board is almost finished. I took the board outside to do some final sanding, and then it's time to give this board a new look. After a quick spray down, I will clean the board and tape it off, and then it's ready for its new colors. We're gonna paint the edge of the board because I sanded through all the red paint, and we're gonna give it a new look. I asked my neighbor Jeroen if he had some spare paint lying around in some funky colors, and he found some silver radiator paint. So we're gonna paint the silver edge on this board instead of the red, and we're gonna add some funky stuff with this 3D printed logo of Tom's Business. During the painting, Jeroen was exactly in front of the time lapse, so you couldn't see it very well, but you'll get the idea. I removed the tape and the painting turned out great. I heated up the glue from the 3D printed template and then removed it with some white spirit. I added my logo and then painted this board in a 2K clear coat. I did some fine wet sanding with some 800 grit sandpaper, and then this board was finished. It's time to invite Tom to the garden to check out his new board.
De kleur?
Nou, dat was die niet, hè?
Nee, dat was die niet.
Daar is dat zeker voor.
Zo. Fucking mooi.
I really like to fully repair those snap boards. When people see a snap board, they think it's ready for the trash, but you can really turn it into a nice surfboard again. So that's really satisfying to do, and hopefully also satisfying to watch. That's it for this video. I hope to see you on the next one.